Okay, so welcome everybody. I'm Anne Mumford from Rosalie Ivanhoe Tennis Club in Leicestershire. And last year, I'd recently joined the Tennis Volunteer Community Facebook site, and I found that there was an awful lot of discussion, and I have to say angst, regarding the processes and what people had to do with their venue registration. So, and I shared that in many ways because I was our lead for our club on doing the response on venue registration and have been really since it started. So what this session aims to do is to get us to a better place to understand venue registration during this year, which will be launched fairly soon. The session today is part of a series which has been instigated by Salmon Spalter, and our next one is on 13th of November, so just to give a plug for that, with Abby Lynch and Ollie Scadgel from the LTA. So that's just to give you advance notice of that, although it was on the October newsletter. I'd like to thank Douglas for supporting me today, and now introduce Ian Lancaster from the LTA and his colleague Rhys Doherty, who are going to introduce venue registration, talk about the reactions that they've had, the problems that I have summarised and discussed with Ian that came up on the Tennis Volunteer Community list. And then we'll take some questions after that. And I'm going to group the questions, and I'll talk to you about how that's going to happen. Feel free to put things on the chat. But Simon's asked that we don't put personal emails and phone numbers on the chat because that makes it impossible then to share that information with everybody. So if people can just put general comments, then we can link people up afterwards if that's what people want to do. So can I pass over to Ian Lancaster now, who's going to share some slides and talk to us about venue registration and hopefully address some of the concerns that we may have. Thank you. Ian, over to you, Ian.
Sam, thank you. Afternoon, everybody. As Anne said, my name's Ian Lancaster. I'm Club Support Manager at the LTA. One of my responsibilities is managing the venue registration portal and the process. Obviously, Anne's asked me to cover off a few things today. I'm just going to share my screen as well, just so you can. I'll walk you through some things online. Bear with me 1 second. There we go. So yeah, Anne's asked me to cover off a few things around, I suppose, what the whats and the whys of LTA venue registration, and hopefully we can provide you with some guidance on how to get smoothly through the process this year. So if we start with that, the whats and the whys, just as a reminder, LTA venue registration is our registration scheme for tennis and paddle venues. I see it as just as an online membership form, really, so that we're aware at any one point who is an LTA registered member, who we're providing the benefits to. If you think about insurance, for example, we have an obligation to tell insurance companies who we're covering in terms of our insurance. But we also use the registration portal to capture some information about your venue, so what facilities you have, what programs you might run, which feeds other tools that we have within the LTA, so things like the Find a Court tool or the LTA Play app, for example. We also want to know who to communicate to, so we capture details about your club committees, key roles such as your chair, your secretary, treasurer, your coaching team. But also, and finally, probably very importantly, it's our mechanism to implement safeguarding standards across the sport. And by being an LTA registered venue, you obviously show your commitment to ensuring that tennis is safe and welcoming for all ages, disabilities and abilities. We also capture some details around, as I've said, your facilities, your programs, your membership and your coaching programs as well. What we do each year is we try to streamline the process as much as possible and reduce the amount of information that we capture. So I'll come on to sort of how we build that development work in a second, but obviously I just also wanted to cover the benefits that we offer in return for it being a registered venue. So we include a number of benefits. Obviously, we've covered LTA insurance from our public liability, directors and officers cover. and employer's liability. We also have management software available through ClubSpot, which can manage your bookings, your membership, also provide things like a club website. We also have a range of business tools that can hopefully help you save you money or time. This includes our venue support toolkit. That includes information about growing your membership, retaining your members, court utilisation programming, financial sustainability, good governance, inclusion, environmental sustainability, and that toolkit is never ending. So we're constantly developing that. I'm actually also in conversation with Simon about bringing that to life through one of these sessions as well. So hopefully that was something that will follow. In addition to the toolkit, we also have a number of partners that we work with. So we work with a legal company to provide a legal helpline for your venue. So if you have any legal queries, you can get free advice from the helpline. We have an LTA buying group to help procurement around utilities, for example. And then we have people like Easy Fundraising we work with around fundraising for your club, and Zeller platform, which is something that's relatively new, but it's a sustainability platform where you can help measure your carbon footprint. Other benefits include obviously the individual membership for your members that give them access to the LTA Wimbledon ballot, and then you can access a suite of LTA programs and also LTA competition for your members and your players. And finally, just that one on there, access to quick access loan screen. And kindly collected feedback from the tennis volunteer community last year, and we ran a similar survey in January last year as well. And it's pretty useful if I just share some of those results with you. Findings were pretty common across the two, but in January we contacted over 2,500 main contacts, and they were invited to complete a short survey. Over 700 individuals replied, so a pretty good response rate, about 25% response rate. The majority of those were unsurprisingly clubs, but we also gathered feedback from parks and other types of tennis facilities as well. And we had a good mix of size of club and also geography. We asked within that a section around sort of the ease of use. These were some of those results. So just over 2/3, 69% of main contacts found the process very easy or easy. 22% were neither difficult or easy, and then 9% experienced some sort of difficulty. So what we did then do within that survey is we deep dived into that, and we looked at what those difficulties were. Anne and I met to discuss the feedback. We spoke to our delivery team on the ground, customer support team, so Reese, who's on the call today. We spoke with his team, and also through the county tennis counties as well. And then what we do, all that feedback, that informs what we call a development backlog. So that's basically a plan or a process to improve the portal, improve the process going forward for the next window. And that's what we're currently working on at the moment, to basically implement all of that. What this deep dive uncovered was basically there were some issues with the risk assessment. So particularly this was about the binary answer options, being a yes or a no to the risk assessment. Uploading venue information related to personnel, so particularly well for officer and coaches. I think, we know that obviously the majority of that was related to meeting those safeguarding standards. And then people were asking clarity around the LTA Vantage membership database that we serve up within the portal as well. So that was going to be the focus of today. So here you can see payment and download access were pretty straightforward, but obviously there was a significant minority found the risk assessment difficulty, and also some challenges around the upload of team information. So they were the key learnings from this. And I suppose that's what we'll try and cover off today with regards to those issues, and also a little bit about timeline and where to go to support around venue registration. So in terms of risk assessment, this was a really easy one for us, really. The risk assessment is actually hosted by Howden, so it sits with the insurance company. And they've actually implemented not applicable on all questions. So all questions from now on are yes or no to responses, but there is also a not applicable on every option. That was actually in place last year, so I'm hoping that's a smoother process through this year. What I would say, or some top tips around risk assessment, is when you're telling us about your facilities, just make sure they're really accurate, because that influences the risk assessment. So, for example, and this is extreme, but if you told us you have a swimming pool, you'll be served up a risk assessment about swimming pools. I know that's quite a niche one, but the two are interrelated, so it's very well worth. We do get some queries about people saying we haven't got a clubhouse, but we've been asked around risk assessment around our clubhouse. So it's probably because within the facilities, clubhouse has been selected. The other idea around it is, or we get some questions around the risk assessment action plan as well. So the risk assessment action plan that's served up after you've completed the risk assessment, it's a recommendation based on your answers to that risk assessment. It will highlight actions and suggestions to minimize those risks. It doesn't invalidate your insurance in any way, but I suppose mitigations against some of those hazards might be useful if you were to claim, and because you can go back to that and demonstrate that you've taken some steps as a club to minimize an incident or an accident happening. In terms of safeguarding standards, I think the main issues that we found in the survey were just around awareness of what was required to meet the safeguarding standards. So being aware of what training or whether DBS was expiring for a welfare officer, for example. So as a very, very quick snapshot, in terms of welfare officers were required to have attended safeguarding training in the last 3 years and have a DBS or a PVG if you're in Scotland in the last 3 years too. And then that detail sits against that person's profile in the LTA database. And then when you name your welfare officer within the portal, it looks up against that detail and flags if it's good to go, that you can move through the process, or if it's approaching expiry, you'll also get a flag, but you also get a block as well if it has expired. And the same, I suppose, logic works for coaches as well. So a quick overview: level 1 coaches don't need to be LTA accredited, but they are expected to have DBS or PVG and safeguarding training. And levels 2 to 5 coaches need to be LTA accredited. And the LTA accreditation basically supersedes those individual requirements on safeguarding, DBS and first aid, because you have to have those in place to be LTA accredited. In terms of lookup and where you can find this, it's all available on the registration portal. So if you log into LTA Advantage, you'll get 2 options to review it. Basically, you can either go straight to the registration portal, you'll be able to navigate to either the welfare section or the coaching section, and be able to review whether there's any flags in there. They'll be red. The section will be highlighted red if there's any issues. But there's also another link in that LTA Advantage login called Venue Safeguarding Standards, and that's basically just a quick overview of whether you're meeting those standards or not against your welfare officers and your coaches. So that's another link that can be used. Reece might be able to tell you more about this later, but I think it's just really important that obviously DBSs can take a bit of time to apply for. So leave enough time to apply and get that DBS through. I'm not sure on the timeline, but it potentially can be up to 3 months in some cases. LTA Advantage database. I don't know if you want me to cover this now, Anne, or you want to pick this up in questions. I'm quite happy to.
Yeah, happy for you to cover it now.
Yeah, okay. So in terms of the LTA database, again, within our survey, I think it was more around the issue that was why does it exist? What do club, or what do you want us to do with it in terms of from a club perspective? So what it is this is basically we serve up a list of people attached to your club that are in the LTA database. So in the LTA database, they have said that their home club is your club. And we serve that basically up within the venue registration portal. The reason we serve it up is that it's linked to the LTA Advantage benefits like the Wimbledon ballot. So any LTA Advantage member who's linked to a registered club is provided Play Plus membership, which does give you access to ballot. It's the reason it might differ to your Club Spark membership module, for example, is that there's no direct sync between the two. So your listing Club Spark will be different to how we served it up. Obviously, some venues don't use Club Spark, so we have to serve up a means of people being able to attach themselves to those venues. We did try to sync Club Spark databases with this list. I think it was about 2 years ago, and some of you might have had some annoying emails that went to members incorrectly. But we basically switched that off because that sync obviously didn't work for all venues, and I think that was just because we hadn't realised that the membership modules used very differently at different venues. So some venues play a completely different sort of grace period to how they collect renewals. In which case there wasn't sort of one single method that we could rely on the Club Spark sync to be an accurate reflection of the members at the time. But this is obviously we're serving this up. We would obviously appreciate clubs to update that list and remove members who aren't members of your club. And the main reason, obviously, they're not giving them access to that advantage, to that Wimbledon ballot option. But obviously, we understand that can be time consuming for some clubs. And I know you've done this. So I don't know if you want to give your experiences around having tackled this yourself.
Perhaps we could. I don't want to spend too long, but yeah, certainly I ended up downloading both lists and using Excel to do a comparison, and then did the hard graft. And I know a number of people on the list have done that, but I don't want to take the time now to say anything more unless that's helpful later on in response to a question. So do you want to carry on, Ian, and then we'll
yeah.
Because I know you were going to talk about there were some more things on your previous slide.
Yeah, no problem. Almost there on my side. So the next bit I was just going to cover was really just some links. I've just got this links. We can share this via the group following, but there's some really good links that the customer support team put together in terms around that safeguarding element to where you can get information on the safeguarding element much quicker. And then in terms of where to go for support, I've certainly always direct everyone to the customer support team and the online form. I'm going to stress and stick up for the guys here because I work with Reece really closely around venue registration, and we monitor all incoming cases when we launch venue registration. If something goes down or there's a bug and there's lots of venues coming in, we can see all the cases in one go. That helps me when I go to the tech team and say we've got a bug, it needs fixing, and I can help prioritize it because then I can clearly say we've got all these clubs going through it. This is the quantity, this is the seriousness of the issue, in which case that prioritizes that fix over others. Whereas in the past, where individuals might have gone to a delivery team member or to a county association or come into it, all the cases are then spread around, so it gives me less weight. So ideally, we can just see things in live through that case portal as well. In terms of timeline, just to give you an overview, we're not currently open for new renewals yet. We will communicate with you by email once we're open. I'm currently doing all our testing at the moment. So as soon as I finish this call, I'll straight back onto testing. Once we've ensured that the portal is completely bug-free, we will launch. We're looking at next week, but as I've said to Anne and a few guys on the call just before we started, if we're not ready to live before Wednesday, we probably won't go live until the following week, but you will receive communication, direct email straight to you as soon as we're open. You can still get on the portal. You can update any of the information on there now, so you would be ready for when we do launch. What I would stress is just do the risk assessment within the portal when we're open. So that's the last piece of advice to do. And then the last thing from me before we go for obviously some questions is just around next year, we're going to conduct a bit of a deeper dive into the whole review of venue registration. So again, feedback from yourselves on this will inform that review as well. So we're definitely listening around what we're doing with venue registration. The same survey we did in January this year, we'll also do something similar when you register. So we appreciate your feedbacks through that portal. But yeah, very quick overview from me. So I don't know if I stop sharing slide and hand back to you, Anne.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. What I suggest we do is, because I'm sure people have a number of questions, is that we group some of the questions. So I'm proposing that we look at welfare first, then advantage membership, and then risk assessments, and take a few questions on each of those, and then can pick up anything general. And I hope that's an acceptable way of working. I know Douglas is keeping an eye on the chat, and then maybe we can come back to that. So what I want to do is I want to ask if there's any questions. Firstly, and can you use your hand? We should be on most systems, I think, under reactions. So if you could use your electronic hand, then I can see the order of people who put their hands up. So I want to take 3 questions, and could you say who you are and where you're from on welfare, if people have got any questions on welfare first. So that's the coaches registration, your welfare officers. So has anybody got any questions on that?
And just while people are doing that, you've got 3 questions sitting on the chat.
Okay.
And there's one from Stephen Phillips, which talks about safeguarding. You might want to go to him first to ask his question.
Okay, Stephen.
And Stephen Phillips has also said that he's struggling to hear you clearly. I don't know whether anyone else is in that situation.
Okay. Right, well, Stephen, if you could speak, please, wherever you are.
Hello there. Can you hear me? Hi,
Yeah.
Anne. Yes, my point is, Mike, very called a lot of concern. We had a check when the club was closed. We hire our courts from a school. And we're volunteers. And instead of somebody coming round saying, can we come round, have a chat about your safeguarding, just run through everything's up to date and so forth, and dealing with it in an amicable fashion. We had an uninvited visit. The club was closed. The LTA representative was in fact trespassing. Couldn't get into our clubhouse, but still wrote us a letter as if they were like a tax inspector or VAT. With various points. And I think it was dealt with in an appalling way. And in fact, John Love, Middlesex welfare officer, agrees with me 100%. And I've made my concerns to the representative who came. And I just think people should be aware of it. We're volunteers, we do our best. It's virtually a full-time job for me, running the club, which I enjoy doing. But to be treated in this manner it's appalling. And the LTA should have more consideration for us volunteers.
Okay, does anybody else want to say something about welfare or safeguarding? No, okay, so before you respond to that, or Reese, can I say something from my own club's point of view, is that we did have a visit from the LTA, a review. An appointment was made with the person who's the welfare officer on our committee, and it was a very constructive meeting. And certainly I know a few people have said that on the volunteer. I'm not undermining what Stephen has said at all, because that was a different experience. I had we had a different experience at my own club. So I don't know if you're able to answer that, Ian.
Obviously, I'll just say, obviously, apologies, Stephen, that experience wasn't great. I don't know how the audits are conducted. That sits with our safeguarding team, but I can certainly take that away and feed that back in terms of how it's conducted, how they communicate with you around those safeguarding audits taking place. So, but yeah, I'm more than happy to take that back to the safeguarding team, and I'm sure John, in his position as well, could certainly feed that back through through the county structure as well.
Well, months ago, I actually requested an actual meeting, and it never came. I never had this meeting. The other thing I would say, I mean, I think they should have meetings with the clubs, because frankly, we've put up all the posters and everything that you've required. But I think if you want to know about safeguarding, do a spot check. Speak to the members of the club. They'll tell you if there's any. We take safeguarding very, very seriously. You know, I'm a father and a grandfather. I take it extremely seriously, and I make a point of knowing we're a smallish club, 100+ members. I know every single member. We meet every prospective member before they join the club, and we're a very close-knit unit. You could even describe us as a family. And I think you'd be much better with safeguard. Speak to the members, do a spot check on them, ask them if they've got any concerns and so forth. It would be far more valuable than just making sure that we've got posters up. And please, and you know, you put them in the notice board and everything. Most of the members don't even read them.
No, I think you've so I think there are clearly a number of experiences, and I think it's a case of consistency as well, which is important, Ian, as you say. So perhaps there may be an opportunity to follow up with Stephen's experience and others in his county if he's got a very different experience from others, say, such as myself. I'm not saying it wasn't a challenging visit, but and we did end up with quite a few actions, but it was certainly constructive and supportive is how we would describe it. Okay, so can I then move on? There's nothing else on welfare. Has anybody got any specific questions related to the Advantage membership?
And Alison Findlay has posted onto the chat.
Okay,
and you might like to go to her to ask her question.
Yeah, that'd be good. Thank you. Alison.
Hello there. Yeah, it was just really an observation about the LTA database. I usually try and make a point before registration to download it and check, and as you've described it, Ian, you know, delete MD that's no longer part of the venue. I do keep coming across errors. I think sometimes with the renewals, people have accidentally ended up with 2 different memberships, or just I know enough to see errors in their information. Way back in the dark ages, I think when this started, the club main contact was able to advise the LTA, oh, there's a duplicate membership here, or there's something. That was taken away, I presume, for data protection reasons. But when I go back to members and say, right, you need to go to the LTA, you've got 2 numbers. Some do, and they tell me it never gets fixed. Some, I assume, don't. I just wondered if there was any way to sort of reinstate the club main contact having a little bit more of a role in cleaning up the database. That was all.
Okay, Reece, can you respond to that one?
I was about to say, Ian, do you want me to take this one because my team do merging?
I'm to you anyway, Reece.
Yeah, of course. So yeah, previously, back when we used, I'm going into too much detail now, a different internal operating system, the ability to do sort of like have club main contacts passing that information over, and then us doing those merges was in place. But yeah, as you rightly point out, sort of that no longer exists because of, we're obviously handling data for people, different individuals. And realize in the vast majority of cases that members get in touch to flag with us that they've got 2 accounts so that we use them, or we could confirm relevant identity before we go ahead and merge them. That being said, if there are members who are struggling to merge accounts, then we're not object to, as a club main contact, you saying, I have this member who has got 2 accounts, and providing us with their relevant contact detail. And we can reach out to them directly. We're not objected to that, because that does help us. I think my team will support me in saying this, that the number of duplicate accounts that sometimes exist does cause us, as a customer support team, a number of issues. So we're not objected to them being flagged of us. Sometimes we might be able to merge very clear merges. Sometimes we might need to reach out to the member in question. But what we can't do is sort of mass merges like we used to, right, as you right now, because we are effectively merging information is personal to the people.
Yeah, I mean, I've certainly in my experience, Alison and Reese, is that I've actually sent in a couple recently because we don't know their LTA ID and it's quite difficult. And what we find is that we've got people perhaps described with a name of Victoria and Vicky. And then the thing is that it feeds then into the leagues because it feeds into tournament software and so some people have used one, but in one case we found recently, she's got her record. Sometimes people have chosen Victoria and sometimes Vicky because those two things exist, because it then does duplicate into tournament software. So there are some challenges. So Alison, certainly I've put in some, I think it's 3 recently, and although they're still sitting with the team, I did get a willingness to help me merge a few when I was doing a recent review.
That's really helpful to know. I wasn't aware that we could do that anymore. Reese, thanks for that. That's really helpful. You might
I was just cheeky and asked.
Well, I've just warned you might be getting a long email from me sometime in the future, but that would be really helpful. Thanks very much.
Yeah, I think it's that it can't be done in bulk, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I think a small number, I think, is of people who perhaps we still find people who can't manage to deal with some of the IT, which I think is an issue. Okay, so anything else on the Advantage membership that anybody like to raise?
And you've got a question from Deborah Miller about her secretary is leaving post. So you might.
Yeah, that's a slightly different question. I was going to pick that up afterwards, but we can pick it up now. Deborah, you've asked about whether we can make somebody else the lead contact rather than somebody who's left the club. I believe that is the case, isn't it?
Would you answer that one, Anne?
Yeah, could you just say how it's practically done? Because obviously you need somebody to log in and have the rights to enable somebody else to do it.
Yeah, no problem. So Deborah, I don't know if the secretary has already left or not, but if they haven't and they've still got access to the portal, from within the portal, they can go in and they can apply what we call in the system web admin access. So that basically, if they selected yourself or another committee member or treasurer, for example, and then just tick the web admin access button, they would then have access to the portal. They can then access the portal and do the registration process themselves. If the secretary has left completely and you can't gain access, Reese, I think they can just come through to the customer support team and you'll make those changes online for them.
Okay, so hopefully that's helpful. Can I turn now to pick up before we pick up any general questions anybody might have? Has anybody got anything specific on the risk assessment side of things? No. Okay, well, what we'll do then is I'll just open questions generally then. Has anybody got any issues they'd like to raise with regard to venue registration? Philip.
Just a couple of observations that I made after completing venue registration last year. One was that amongst the role descriptions was membership secretary, but if you tried to allocate that to anybody, it wouldn't work. And the second one is, I also pointed out that the expiry date of the insurance provider as part of venue registration is the 30th of September. And renewal of venue registration doesn't begin until sometime in October. With regard to that, I was told not to worry about it, it would be fine. I don't think I'd like to adopt that approach to my car insurance, for example. Has anybody got a comment on that?
Again, I'm happy to answer if you want.
Yeah, go on in. You go.
Okay, I was just saying on the membership secretary one, yeah, that was identified as a bug, and you should have been able to access membership secretary. That's been fixed as of this year, and you'll be able to declare who your membership secretary is as well. So that one's all okay. In terms of expiry date on the insurance, so because the LTA insurance is a group policy, we renew it every single year on time. And therefore it's a continuous policy. I work or try and work as hard as possible to try and get open before we expire. That's not always the case as in this year. Also, we're past that date. But we apply that grace period between. So if as long as you register between when we open and December 31st, you obviously cover under that policy. And if you were to make a claim and went to Howden to say, we're a registered venue, they come to me and say, are you registered? And we verify that registration. So because you're covered under that group policy. Again, as part of that review for next year, we need to look at how we do this and make sure that obviously as soon as you can get a policy new certificate as soon as possible. So definitely one for the future, but I can definitely confirm you are covered under that insurance policy as of today.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, both of you.
Thanks, Philip.
Which club you from, Philip?
So Abingdon Tennis Club in Oxfordshire.
Hi. Okay, so Andrew French, question for you.
Yes, hello. I'm the chairman at Old Wilsonians Tennis Club in Bromley. I've been a chair now, it's coming up my 3rd year. I've done the registration twice, I think, and not had any particular difficulty, although I do remember in the risk assessment, it rather assumed that the club was professionally run, and that made some of the questions difficult to answer, unsatisfactory in terms of the way you answered them. So I hope that's changed, because obviously most of the clubs, I'm sure most people here, are running their clubs on a volunteer basis. I just wanted to clarify, Ian, maybe this is a question for you. Who should we contact if we do have any difficulties filling in the registration process?
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. From the risk assessment point of view, I'll cover that point as well. That's written and provided by Howden. Obviously, we can work with Howden and try and make any changes to that. So we'll do the same risk assessment as last year, but we have that ability to say not applicable to a question that doesn't apply to your positional situation. In terms of where to support, I'll direct everything towards the customer support team and to Reese's team. They can pick up inquiries and cases and deal with them. And again, back to my other point is just obviously we can have the ability to be able to see visibility of all those cases coming in and track any patterns. So if you've got a particular issue, it might not just be you, it might be a bug, it might be something. I'm going to say touch wood and touch my desk and everything around me. It's one of the most stable platforms that we have. We don't have too many issues, but yeah, customer support team and then the support centre. There's FAQs on there that might help answer your question, but if not, you can raise an inquiry, go straight through to Reese's team who will respond. And Reese, I believe, well, I know this, but you prioritise venue registration during that window, don't you?
Can I ask Reese if you could put the link to the customer support form on the chat? Is that possible?
Yeah, of course. I'll link to the venue registration specific area of the customer support centre, and then you can flow through.
Sorry. When people are choosing a category as to what they're questioning about, is venue registration one of the categories? Or what's the best category to put?
When you go onto the inquiry form, I'd probably recommend use and volunteer support as predominantly category to use. Ultimately, though, that isn't the be all and end all. I think if you're inquiring about venue registration, if you include that as a word or 2 words, sorry, in there, then we'll pick it up as part of sort of like keyword identifiers, because that will also help to flag it as well. But venue and volunteer support is probably the most applicable one during the venue registration window.
Okay, thanks very much, Reece. Any other questions people would like to raise? Is there anything more in the chat? Yes, Stephen, you've asked.
Yeah,
again?
hi. Am I right in saying, but we cannot actually speak to Reece? We have to, it's all email.
So I'll
Reece.
go this one. Go this one. So we do not operate an inbound phone line at the LTA. We operate an inquiry form for people to raise a ticket with us.
Oh,
The sort of inquiry that is being raised, raising it feels that it's going to be resolve or provide support to the customer via phone, then they would arrange a time to speak to you on the phone as well. The vast majority of our inquiries sort of are resolved via email, as that's sort of the most efficient and effective way, but we do call out when it is required.
okay, thank you.
All right.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, can I pick one up on the Advantage membership? When we put in our committee members, so we're about to have our AGM and we'll put our committee members up and the roles that they have. One of the things that we then have to do is to add them as volunteers as well, if we want them to be able to go into the volunteer ballot. Is there any way that those could be combined in the future? So if I say somebody's the secretary, that they also get the flag as volunteer automatically?
So you shouldn't have to add as volunteer. What we do find though is, and the reason why we might need people might think or add people also as volunteer, is when you are adding someone to a role, there is also a question around sort of the hours, or whether that role is voluntary or not. And if you state in that question that their role is not voluntary or X number of paid hours, then that would not allow them to access the volunteer ballot because the system deems that role as non-voluntary. So if they're entered just as a secretary, then without any paid status, then they would get access to the volunteer ballot.
Okay, that's helpful, because I've always assumed I had to do it twice, like say they're the secretary and they're a volunteer. But I can see that some people are volunteers who are not on the committee, so that would make sense to have that category. But I didn't realise that one subsumed the other, so that's really helpful. Thank you.
And if it's useful, because I think Deborah's asked for me to show the screen that was in relation to her previous question, I could share screen now and show you both of those at once.
Yeah, thank you.
If I can find the screen. Here we go. So, can you see that screen at the moment?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, so this is obviously when I've gone into our venue team on this is my test site. When I've gone into the venue team, you'll list your venue roles if you hit the edit button on this person. So this is me. Deborah, this is where the web admin access is. So basically I can, if it says no, it won't give this person access to the portal. If I say yes, it will provide access to the portal. And then the two fields that Reece was talking about just then was type of work. You've got volunteer down here. You could select that, and then there's a little bit of a brief copy there about the volunteer only ballot as well. So regardless of this, if this was membership secretary, for example, and this was volunteer, I'd still give that person access to the volunteer ballot. This doesn't have to be, membership secretary and volunteer. So yeah, thought it'd be useful to share on screen instead.
Yeah, thank you very much. Does that help? Deborah, does that help?
Yes, I was also wondering the screen where you go to, if you've got to raise a query with Reece's department, that you get to an online contact form, I think, and you have to fill that in. Do you get an email? What response do you get to know that someone's coming back to you on your query?
Sorry, I was just finding out or getting the links to put in the chat for it. Yes, there is an automated response that goes back. It's generic. It just sort of confirms it sort of confirms the email's been received. It gives you a specific case number. So if at any point you need to follow up on it, then you can reply back to that email. But you could also raise another one just saying, I'm just checking on this number. It just sort of advertises what our response time is at the moment. And that's generally what it does. It doesn't provide anything massively special apart from a ticket number, so that you've got it and you're able to refer back to it if you need to.
Okay,
Okay.
Deborah, which club are you from?
Swanage in Dorset. Thank you.
Douglas, you've got your hand up.
I do, thank you. So my question to Ian is, Ian, in the event that there is a problem, say that our tennis club, field tennis club in Sussex, we have a problem and we fail the venue registration for whatever reason. What is the process that you go through to help us get back successfully registering?
So I wouldn't see venue registration as a pass or a fail. Hopefully it's an online form to tell us some information about your tennis club. Obviously, the safeguarding standards are the only thing that will block you from progressing. So if you obviously didn't meet those standards, so if your welfare officer didn't have training, assuming that obviously, let's say you've come through to the customer support team to say, how do I get training? The customer support team's response will be where that individual could potentially get their training from, you know, the latest courses, how to apply through a DBS process, for example, if that was the other blocker. So there'd be support from that channel. We also obviously do have a delivery team on the ground, and we have, I know Annie's on the call from a county association perspective. Both of those will certainly give you some guidance and support around getting through that process, and hopefully then you'd meet that standard and be able to proceed with your registration. But other than safeguarding standards, there's nothing in registration that would block you from registering.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Douglas. Anne, you've asked Anne Hollian, you've asked a question about a role of an influencer, which Anne, do you want to come in? You need to unmute yourself.
I think it's just when I had a quick look at the committee members that I've added, suddenly this influencer appeared next to one of the committee members, which I've not seen before, and I hadn't added it, but I think, so can anyone enlighten me?
Which club are you from, Anne?
Alderley Lawn Tennis Club in Wirral.
Right. Ah, right. Ian Rees.
Yeah, I've not seen that before. Is influence the right word? Was it an activator?
Oh, an activator, yeah.
Okay.
I got confused, sorry. Yeah.
So recently the LTA launched an activator program, which was calling on people who wanted to nominate themselves as an activator across a number of venues. Sorry, not a number of venues. What they do within that process of applying to be an activator is they nominate the venue that they want to activate at. Reese, correct me if I'm wrong. So somebody's gone through that process and said that they are activating at Alderley, in which case they've been added to that venue team, because this was in place last year, but we didn't serve that information up to you through the registration portal. We're now serving that up. If you see them and don't recognize them and think, I have no idea who this person is, by all means remove them from your venue team. And what I've said to Reese and to our development team is you just need to look at that process, because I think I've seen it on the tennis volunteer community a few times where people have said, I don't know who this person is, in which case what they've done is they've just wrongly decided to activate. The other way you could see it as well as a positive, you might want to reach out to that person and find out if they do want to activate and help at your tennis venue, because they've obviously got some connection with that venue.
Thanks, that's fine. Thank you very much.
Okay, any last questions? No, is there anything else in the chat? No.
No.
I don't think so. Okay, so we will We'll close the session in a couple of minutes. Ian and Reese, thank you very much. Oh, Stephen's put his hand up.
No, you got there and for me. I just wanted to thank everybody for arranging this meeting. It's very good, and
Okay.
it's very important, I think, to have this link with members of the LTA and so forth. So thank you very much for organizing it and giving up your time, because I don't mean that. I mean that in a sincere way. Giving up your lunch hours, in fact. But I think it's great having this meeting, and it brings people together. It gives us a chance to air our views, etc., and exchange opinions. And I think it's very, very worthwhile. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you for everybody who's joined in. And I would like to thank Douglas for helping me. Simon, I think, has left the call probably, but he's obviously the leading light of the tennis volunteers community. But Ian and Reese pass on to your team. I certainly think that our thanks, because I do think that the responses are coming through much quicker and much more helpfully than perhaps used to be the case. And I think we all need that desperately, because as things have gone more central and less county-based or regional-based, us volunteers actually do need help, and we do need to. It is hard when we've not got a kind of like a known person. So it's also really useful, I think, that Ian and Reese have attended today, so that they can. We've got a face on some of the names, which is really helpful. Can I remind you of the next event? So Simon's put something in the chat, which is with Abby Lynch and Ollie Scadgel, who are senior colleagues in the LTA. So I think that'll be a really useful session for us to join in. I know Ollie did one a little while ago that was very useful, and it is helpful, I think, for us to get together. So thank you very much for attending. I hope you find it useful. If you've got any, encourage other people to attend other meetings on the list. If you're on the list, hopefully you are. And we'll see you at another event. So thanks very much. And I think Douglas, Ian and Reese are going to stay on the call just to wrap up with me. But thanks very much, everybody. Thank you. Bye-bye. You may leave now.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye. Bye. Thank you. Well, thank you, Ian, for the advice on the defibrillator.
Okay, no problem. Have you got one?